It's great that we have got some opportunity to take time away from the day job to sit with licensed IP Katie McLachlan and manager of 16 years, Lauren Brown. We are going to have a bit of a chat about personal insolvency because regrettably at the moment with the well-reported cost of living increases, there are significant amount of personal insolvency in the UK. I wondered, Katie, as a licensed insolvency practitioner, if you could explain a little bit about personal insolvency.
So personal insolvency, as the name suggests, is personal. It's about you and your financial circumstances. As an individual, your finances are separate to any limited company that you might be involved in. So this is personal debt. It could be credit card debt. It could be loans, anything of that nature that you've taken out in your own personal name, and you might be needing a little bit of help with.
And how does it differ from a business insolvency?
So a business insolvency, limited companies are their own legal entity. And that means that for people involved with limited companies, they've got a bubble of protection around them. They're not personally financially responsible for the debts of that business. Of course, when it comes to you as an individual, if you take out a credit card and run up debt, you're personally responsible to repay that credit card debt. There's no way of getting away from it. And if things do become unmanageable, one of the most sensible things to do is to seek some insolvency advice for yourself.
Oh, thanks, Katie. It's good to get the difference between the two, I think. In your experience, Lauren, what have been some of the reasons that you've met with individuals that have faced personal insolvency or end up going down some form of route?
Quite often it's a change in circumstances. It might be that they've maybe lost their job or there's been a period of ill health and they've been out of work, and which has meant a reduced income. Quite often it can be a family member's passed away or they've separated, gone through a divorce, and quite often that has a huge impact on a household income and managing the day-to-day expenses.
It's quite a big thing, I would imagine, when people are coming to speak with you. And I'm sure both of you know that there are a range of different options or routes that someone might go down. But would you be able, Lauren, to give kind of some high level steps that might happen if an individual is looking to go down some type of personal insolvency route and what that might look like?
Yeah, so I mean, there's a couple of options. When we sit down with an individual, we'll have a look at their position, have a look at their income and expenditure, and then from that information, we can find the correct financial solution for them. It may be that they can enter into an informal insolvency process, where it could be that they contact their creditors and arrange a payment plan with them, or it could be that it's a formal insolvency process, which might be where they agree to pay a certain amount back over a certain period of time. Or it might be that they have to go down a formal bankruptcy route. And we will have a look at the information that they bring to us and find the correct solution for them.
And within all of those solutions that Lauren's just outlined, Katie, one of the questions that I often have been asked is, how does it affect my credit rating and what impact does it have on me? Do you have any thoughts about that?
Yeah, so a formal insolvency solution will impact your credit rating. However, continuing to miss payments in regards of your debts will also have an adverse effect on your credit rating. So it's about weighing up, that risk there. Do you continue the way that you're going, defaulting on payments and impacting your credit that way? Or do you take steps to address the root cause of the problem and impact your credit score that way? A formal solution will stay on your credit record for 6 years. So there is a process, a significant period of time where credit will be impacted and it will take time to build that back up again. But at least you will be taking proactive action to address the root cause, and hopefully within a period of years you will get yourself free of that and can rebuild your credit.
And you mentioned there after a period of years, and I guess one of the things that I wanted to explore a little bit here was what the potential consequences of insolvency are, because I'm sure that you'll be able to outline some of them, but one of the ones that occurs to me is that you've dealt with your debt, so it's there. So what are the other types of things that people might face if they decide to go down an insolvency route?
Yeah, so the most important thing is to make sure that you get advice from someone who's adequately qualified to give that, because it is a big decision. You're committing yourself to an insolvency process. From a personal insolvency point of view, the two main procedures are a trust deed or a sequestration in Scotland, which is the Scottish word for bankruptcy. Both of those processes last 4 years. So you're committing 4 years of your life to dealing with the issue. It's not something to be kind of gone into lightly. There's certainly impacts. Both processes have various pros and cons, and neither might be suitable to someone's situation. So it really depends. Certainly with sequestration, there are some restrictions placed on the individual for a year. So you can't be a director of a limited company for a year. You can't be a member of parliament. You can't take credit over £500 without disclosing your sequestration. And there's a raft of other kind of consequences of going down that route. But if you take proper advice and speak to someone on that, they can guide you through what those consequences are and how they might impact your life.
That's really helpful. I seem to remember that when I was starting out, one of the things you were not allowed to do when you'd been made bankrupt was be the treasurer of your local bowling club. I'm not too sure if that's still the case or not.
I think that's probably true. You definitely can't be a trustee in a charity. There's a few restrictions, and for most people, they actually wouldn't impact on your life. There's a lot of jokes about you can't be an MP. Well, I wouldn't want to be anyway, so most people are fine with that. But the one that does come up mostly is directors of limited companies looking to avoid a sequestration so that they can continue to be a director of a limited company. And for those people, it's really important to come to us early, because a trust deed, if that's a viable solution for them, would circumvent that requirement to give up their limited company. So it's worth definitely having those discussions and exploring that as a route.
It's really helpful to flesh out some of the decision-making process or the pros and cons as to what route might be most suitable. And I wondered, Lauren, are there any other things that you might consider when you sit down with someone about what route might be most important? We've spoken about their director status and their income and expenditure. Are there other things or information that you ask them for?
Yeah, so we need to understand what assets that individual owns, and if they do own such like a property, and if they do own that property, if it's a family home, we need to understand if there's any equity in that property. If you're to enter into a trust deed or into sequestration, we need to understand what equity there is in the property, and if there's significant equity there, we may need to sell the property for the benefit of the creditors. We might not have to sell the property if there's not a huge amount of equity there, and it may be that you can still retain the family home. It's getting that information at the beginning is quite important.
It does sound like it is really important. And how would you go about understanding what the level of equity is in a property?
So we would instruct a valuation of the property, and we would write to the mortgage lender or any security that's on the property and obtain a redemption statement from them. And that would then give us an indication as to what equity was there. If the property was jointly owned, we'd only be interested in that individual's half share of the property, not the entire equity as a whole.
And in your experience, is that something that people that you've spoken to, have they thought about that type of thing before, or is
quite
it quite
often when you speak to individuals, they automatically think they are going to lose their home. They see bankruptcy as, oh, I'm going to be thrown out my property, and that's not always the case.
Mm-hmm. I suppose, as we've said often in all of these conversations, each case is different as well, but it's good to know that there's such a range of different things that can be done there. And we've spoken a lot about the support that we can give from the perspective of a legal side of things. Is there anything else that you're aware of if individuals are looking at personal insolvency or financial distress? Are there any other places that they can go to get more resources, Katie?
There's certainly a lot of free sector resources available to individuals. So charities like Step Change can be approached. They've got resources online to help you managing your finances and resources about what to do if you can't manage. There's also local citizens advice bureaus who can be approached and can provide guidance. And most private insolvency practitioners are more than happy to have a conversation with individuals just to hear what their circumstances are and then point them in the right direction, whether that's help from a licensed insolvency practitioner or passing out to someone else who might be able to help.
It's good that you've got that impartial advice then. And would I be right in thinking that the Accountant in Bankruptcy website also has some publications
They
as
do,
well?
yeah. So the Accountant in Bankruptcy are a branch of the government who oversee sequestrations and trust deeds in Scotland, and they have a wealth of resources and information available to help people.
It's, as I say, it's good to know that there's that impartial advice there as well. once you've maybe gone through a process, Lauren, are you aware of anything that can happen or resources that are available to help the individual maybe manage their finances better going forward?
Yes, so if there's an individual that comes to us and they're having issues with budgeting, we can refer them for a financial education course. It's an online course and it's carried out through Step Change. So we can pass them over to this online website. It gives them information on how to budget. And also, when we're reviewing an individual's income and expenditure, we use something which is called the Common Financial Tool. We can't share any information from the Common Financial Tool, but we can look at an individual's income and expenditure and explain, where they could be making better choices to reduce expenditure on a monthly basis.
Well, that's really helpful, because I would imagine that nobody really wants to be sitting speaking to any of us about their personal finances. So knowing that there's a different way to do things after the fact might be helpful. Are there any other options that people might have that don't involve a protected trusted, Katie, or a sequestration, Lauren, that's not quite as formal as that you're aware of?
Yeah, absolutely. There's all sorts of informal solutions available. So you could seek to take a consolidation loan, take a loan to pay off all of your debts, and then just have that one monthly payment to repay your loan. Of course, you've got to have sufficient credit to be able to get a loan, and it's important that that monthly repayment is actually affordable to you. Alternatively, you could seek to approach your creditors and make an informal arrangement with them. You don't need the engagement of a professional insolvency practitioner to do that. However, that will involve your creditors, of course, agreeing to the payment plan that you put forward. It's not legally binding on creditors, so they can change their mind at any point, and interest and charges would continue to accrue. Whereas in a formal solution, there's no interest and charges, they're frozen, and your creditors are bound into that. But if you're certainly at the stage where a formal solution might be a step too far, speaking to your creditors, and again, going back to that honesty point, addressing the problem head on, speaking to your creditors, letting them know that you're having financial difficulties, particularly in the current climate. Creditors have an obligation to deal with you in a professional manner, and make sure that the costs that you're having to pay are manageable. So there's certainly other things you can look at.
Well, that's good to know as well. And one of the points that you mentioned there was honesty. And Lauren, when you're sitting down with individuals, what would be your top tip to people that might be out there that are looking to seek advice on their finances? What would your top tip be?
Give us all the information that you can. Give us all details of your creditors. Don't hide any, because you've maybe had a credit card that you haven't told your husband or wife about and you don't want them to find out. Be honest, put all information up front so that we can see the full picture.
And what about yourself, Katie, from an appointment taking insolvency perspective?
I would probably say, talking about personal finances, regardless of your situation, is quite a taboo subject in our culture. And certainly, it's all the more difficult when it's the negative side of your finances and the struggle and debt and things. And I would just encourage people to not let that put them off, because the earlier you deal with something, the quicker the resolution, the more options available, and the quicker you kind of come out of the other side of it.
Well, that's really hopeful. One of the things that we talk about a lot at Middlebrooks is, tailoring solutions to find a more positive future. And one of our colleagues earlier on today in another discussion was talking about the amount of directors that he's seen in limited companies that have gone on to do great things. And I'm not going to make myself blush with the amount of people that I've taken through personal solutions, but many of them have gone on to become multimillionaires as well. And, by getting the right help and speaking to the right people, I think what you've both said is that you can go on from this and be a success.
Yeah. It can feel very isolating, as if you're the only person who's sort of struggling with this, but there are literally thousands of people a day reaching out for insolvency help across the country, financial support and things. So you're very much not on your own, and making use, some people don't even know the tools available to them, but making use of the solutions out there is really important.
Fabulous. Thank you both very, very much for your insights today. I really appreciate it. Thank you.